What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to Late to Hoops. Before we get into this video, I got to give a big shout out to a longtime supporter, Isaiah Henry. Bro, you've been here since day one, and he is right. The Jazz did get this win over Memphis a couple nights ago, and Lauri Markkanen has been balling out this year. If you guys want a chance to be featured on the next video at the start, please be sure to subscribe and turn on those post notifications so you can see whenever I leave a post in the community tab. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Each year during the offseason, as NBA fans, we all predict who's going to be great and who's going to be tanking for the lottery, and each year, every single year, it's always different. It seems like a few teams, they come out and shock us, and sometimes they shock us in a good way, and sometimes they shock us in a bad way. Today, we'll be looking at 4 teams that I think are shocking the world right now, starting with number 1, the Utah Jazz. First and foremost, I know this level of play or winning may not persist or be a constant for the Jazz this season, because I do think that they do at the end of the day want to have some form of play in the lottery, whether that's the 1st or the 14th pick, but I wish I would have made a video on them before the season started, because truthfully I was really thinking about making one talking about why I thought Lauri and Colin Sexton might be good together, but it was more just a homer video because truthfully I've been a fan of Lauri Markkanen since he was drafted, I think 7th to Chicago back in 2018. I might put a screenshot up on to fact check that, but the Jazz, they've been playing great basketball all year and really utilizing the talent that they have on this roster, even if it's in small increments. And I think a lot of that has to do with the new head coach, Will Hardy. My only question with this team, and that I guess I would have for Coach Will Hardy, is what is your guys' motive for this season? And I only ask because they have guys like Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley, Malik Beasley. These are guys that are a little bit out of the age range for this rebuild, but they still give quality minutes, they give quality production, and most importantly, they maintain their great trade value. If they aren't going to try and make a play-in push or a playoff push this year, which in my opinion they shouldn't, they should be talking about packaging and making some moves to get some other young guys in here, some young talent, or even just draft capital. I know for a fact the Jazz's GM is good with the draft capital after we saw that Rudy trade. And even though I said I wanted to make a video on the Jazz prior to the season, I don't think me or anyone would have predicted them to be this good. It's not like they're just beating up on bad teams and the schedule's been easy to start the year. I mean, they got a win against the Rockets and the Rockets beat them a few nights later, but you look at these wins. They beat the Nuggets by 20. They beat the Grizzlies, who were the 2 seed last year, twice, and they also beat the Timberwolves, who are probably going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying the Jazz will continue this streak of victory and glory, but they definitely have started this season to shock me and a lot of other people as a shockingly good team. But how about the Portland Trail Blazers? The Portland Trail Blazers sit at number 2 in the West and are currently being led by no other than Damian Lillard and are pretty solid supporting cast, to be honest. This is the first time in a long time any of us are seeing Dame without the help of CJ, and honestly, it's kind of nice. The roster seems to be built up a bit more towards his strength, and Jeremy Grant, he's really just kind of sliding into this role very well as a 3-and-D and someone who can create their own shot. I know that it's probably going to take a little bit more time before we see his stats take a more of a jump like we saw back in Detroit. Granted, he was taking a lot more shots in Detroit, but I do think that Grant can make his way up to a pretty efficient 18, 20, 21 point per game scorer on this roster. But it's just people like Jeremy Grant that really open up the floor and help Dame benefit as a facilitator. Not to mention, they haven't even gotten back a key free agent addition in Gary Payton II. This team will really benefit from the perimeter and on-ball defense. He also just has really good energy as well. The difference between this team's good start and the Jazz's good start is that I could actually see the Blazers somehow, some way floating around the 4 to 7 seed this year. Dame is seriously so good at basketball, and I've seen him drag much worse teams to much bigger hills. The West, it's incredibly tough this year, but with some teams not starting the season hot, it gives the Blazers a decent chance to move forward and kind of build up a few wins as a cushion, so when the play-in comes around, if they have to face a team like the Lakers, you know, they'll have home court. And speaking of the Lakers, I don't even know if I can say they shocked me as a shockingly bad team, because I did tear this team a new one in the offseason explaining the fact that they can't shoot the ball and that the front office had failed for a second year in a row to bring in more shooters to surround LeBron. They just doubled down on Westbrook instead, but man, have they had a rough start. They're 2-0 in their last 2 games, defeating, I think it was the Nuggets 2 nights ago, and then last night they beat the Pelicans, but that does not excuse the putrid start they've had to the season, shooting the ball, moving the ball, and honestly just playing as an organization. If you guys watched a lot of playoff pictures or predictions from your favorite content creators or favorite analysts or whatever going into this season, I'm sure a lot of you noticed that the Lakers, they were either left off most people's list or they were at the bottom and they were fighting for a play-in team in their list. And right now, as they sit at the 13th seed with a record of 2-5, it's sad for me to say that as I look at the rest of the conference and compare them, I find that's honestly around where they should be. I don't think they're better or would make the playoffs over the Suns, the Pelicans, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Timberwolves, the Mavs, and even the Blazers. That's 9 teams right there that I think would beat the Lakers in a 7-game series or in a play-in game. And even if the Lakers were still to get their season back on track and make the play-in, like I said, can they beat any of these 9 teams when they beat the play-in? You know, like, you beat the play-in to get matched up against the 1 or the 2 seed. Would they even win that? Would it even be a series? I just can't take this team seriously right now until they prove me wrong and show me something. Fortunately for the Lakers, they aren't the only big-time organization that's shockingly bad to start this year. It hurts me to say this next team, but I gotta call them like I see them: the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets have been a dumpster fire for the last 3 years as outsiders looking in. Everyone has always had a problem from the moment Harden signed and inked a contract or when Steve Nash was announced as the head coach. There's just been nothing but problems here, and it's not, I don't want to say it's the players' fault or the front office's fault or Steve Nash's fault. I just think collectively the last 3 years for this organization, for this whole entire world, you know, with the virus that was going around, it was just a lot and it was really overwhelming. I think Steve Kerr said it really well the other night, saying that, hey, it's not so much Steve Nash's fault. You know, Eric Spoelstra and I, we could go over there and coach and we probably wouldn't have success. So it just goes to show you what kind of situation the Nets have been in. Now, having said that, I'd like to say I think a swift turnaround is coming soon for Brooklyn. I am a believer in the Nets, but if you guys watched any of my recaps, you know I've wanted Steve Nash fired for a long time. The biggest thing though for me with this team this year is that this team struggled a lot in the second half shooting, pretty much every single game this year, and that's not Nash's fault necessarily. There was a lot of games like against the Bucks, he actually was ejected that game. The Nets, they were up by I think it was 8 or 12 points in the third quarter, and they should have easily won that game in my opinion, but they shot so poorly in that second half that they ultimately gave up that lead. And I'm pretty sure that was the game Giannis only had 9 or 11 points at halftime, and then he exploded for another 30 in the second half. There just seems to be so much heat and need to belittle the Nets from the media and from everyone. So I just hope we can see KD and Kyrie 7-11 back in action on the court. And if they do hire head coach Emeka Udoka, who is on a suspension from the Celtics, not the league, that's right, the Celtics, so he does have the option to go coach elsewhere. If they actually do hire him, it's probably over for everyone. He's a hell of a head coach, and I'd assume, honestly, they might win the finals. But that's just another guess. If you guys made it this far into the video and haven't left a like already, please do, because it helps me and the algorithm so much. If you guys have any opinions, please be sure to leave them in the comments. You know I love to read them and respond to you guys. You guys don't know, the real ones who are watching this right now in these very last seconds, you guys literally make my day every single night. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for the support. Peace.